It's taken for granted these days, or it seems to me to be, that attempts at social engineering are inevitably doomed to actually create nothing but human misery, sometimes human misery of the worst kind. Examples of the 20th century was full of attempts to actually create the perfect society. Stalin's Russia, Nazi Germany, and as we know, both of them created nightmares because they relied upon fighting dirty, i.e., using scapegoating, violence, and coercion to create the perfect society, or at least the most perfect that one could expect in the real world. Now, this isn't to say that all attempts at social engineering have gone that way. There are some cases of social engineering that have been extremely successful, to the point where it's unclear whether or not there's a guiding hand behind them anymore. Two of the most massively successful cases of social engineering I've ever come across in my study of history are still with us to this day. The first is the Indian caste system, the Hindu social strata that make up Indian society. It's so durable and has such a capacity to reinvent itself that even, say, non-Hindu groups like like Christians, Muslims, Parsis, Jains, others, kind of have created castes within the caste system, even though they say that they're a part of it. They're just a member, a compartment in the larger society. It's bolstered by philosophy, it's bolstered by religion, it's bolstered by political thinking, social thinking over the millennia in India. A lot of Indians would say that without it, civilization would be impossible. It is an interesting system in that it absolutely insists on the inequality of human beings, but within that stratified inequality is an overall equality. In other words, we all have value as a member of a certain caste, unless, of course, one is non-caste, Harijan, untouchable. That's where it sort of fails, but I'll get back to that later. And within the social rigidity, there's enormous scope for intellectual freedom. In other words, you can say, do, speculate about anything in India. There's no real taboo in terms of talking. There's no concept of sin the way that we understand it. But you must respect the laws of caste, and you must respect social convention very, very rigidly. This seems to be fraying at the edges, but this has happened before to India, and we shall see where this goes. Some of the metaphysical, intellectual, philosophical speculations that the Indians have done within the framework of this unbelievably rigid, stratified, and inegalitarian system are some of the most mind-blowing and open-minded speculations that I personally have ever experienced. The second big case of social engineering is one that does seem to be kind of on the way out, but it's unclear to me. The Roman Catholic Church. As far as I can tell, the Roman Catholic Church was created during the sort of the beginning of the dying days of the Roman Empire as an attempt to impose political and social orthodoxy, or social standards, unique or even social standards throughout the Western Roman Empire, or the Eastern Roman Empire as well, but that sort of developed its own separate series of categories. And it drew upon the teachings of a first century Jewish quietist philosopher, Jesus Christ, of course. Well, at least that's the way I see him. A lot of people wouldn't see him that way. But it also pulled in all kinds of things: neo-platonism, paganism. So many of the Catholic holidays are actually taken from other religions. So much of Catholic creation mythology, all that kind of thing, are all sort of an aggregate of many different traditions. There's a great amount of paganism in Roman Catholicism, as far as I can see. Now, it too insists upon extreme social rigidity. The people that actually are supposed to speculate on things are the ones who have been trained in order to do this. They go through this very serious vetting process to become clergy. And once they're sort of up there in the elite, then they can start to really speculate on things, but not in such a way as to disturb the faith of the simple. The people at the bottom, they want very simple answers to everything, so we will give them the very simple answers. We'll give them rituals and songs and ceremonies and very simple answers to things. Whereas you get up closer to the top and you talk to, say, what one might call the elite, and you will find that these are actually very, very highly educated, articulate, even urbane and sophisticated people. A lot of the objections that I see here on the internet to Christianity, if you were to put those objections to, say, a Jesuit or a cardinal or any Catholic philosopher of rank, or a lot of them, I should say, they'd probably just give you a very superior smile and say, yes, I know, I've heard all of that and I've overcome those objections myself. And a lot of the objections that they would actually encounter, they probably wouldn't even bother arguing with, because they would, in their mind, it's, okay, being Roman Catholic, or the whole thing about Catholicism, is a lot more than just deciding about the fundamental nature of reality. It's applying that in a practical sense to the real world. In other words, we have to sort of tweak the truth a little bit in order to make society work. This is the best way. It's a good mixture, a good compromise between open speculation, metaphysics, and a properly ordered society. There are certain societies out there where as I said, it looks as though the Catholic Church is on the way out, but it's not clear, because there are certain societies out there where it's difficult to imagine them being the societies that they are without the Catholic Church. The Philippines is an example. Catholicism, or Christianity in general, but usually Catholicism, is so much a part of their civilization that it's hard to imagine Filipino society existing without the Catholic Church. Latin America is the same way. It's just so much a part of everything that exists in these societies, that makes these societies what they are, that if you took that out, well, you couldn't even take it out right now as things stand now. It's just part of the way things are. There are other great attempts at social engineering. One could say that Islam is the contemporary example that we're sort of clashing with, and it too was successful, provided there isn't a non-Islamic world out there. It probably would still be the most successful of all time. Unfortunately, it didn't convert the entire world, so there's people out there that says, well, I don't believe this, and now what does Islam do? It doesn't seem to have any way of coping with this fact that people actually object to it. There are other examples. The ancient Egyptians seem to have a very successful system of social engineering, etc., etc. Now, what is all this about? Well, I think that any system of social engineering is doomed to fail and create, or not necessarily fail, but sort of cut across its own stated aims in terms of creating a properly run society. Because, well, you're trying to create a lovely garden and to be tended by the experts, but any garden that you create is going to have weeds. And what do you do with those weeds? Well, you ship them off to Auschwitz, you ship them off to the Gulag, you denounce them as blasphemers, or you denounce them as troublemakers or whatever, or you allow them to rise. You co-opt them into the system. You shape them. That's the way that the Hindu caste system seems to work. Is it if someone is actually disruptive, they're subtly allowed to rise within the system. So even to this day, you see a lot of these isms around. There's certain libertarianism seems to be the biggest ism out there so far. It seems to say that if we so arrange human affairs in such and such a way, generally in a negative way, in other words, remove any governmental control from anything, and we will then have the perfect society. It's still a utopian vision, and it's still trying to create even an invisible hand to tend the garden. And again, it creates weeds. What do we do with people that don't want things to be that way? Well, we denounce them. We call them socialists. We call them troublemakers, authoritarians, whatever. In other words, libertarianism is simply another a version of Roman Catholicism or the caste system in India or Islam or whatever. It just says that this is the way things ought to be, and if it's not done that way, then we have to find out who the problem people are and deal with them. So it's the same story all over again. Now, if we want to follow these sort of attempts at social engineering, then we better be prepared to deal with the fact that there's going to be outcasts and scapegoats and square pegs out there, and we better be prepared to deal with them. I don't really want to have to be in that position, because I don't think that human society can be reduced to a series of arithmetical, scientific, or even rhetorical formulae. I don't think that we work that way. In fact, I don't think that we make any sense at all. And I think that essentially, to build a proper human society, the best we can do is make the rules up as we go along. Thank you.